So that was my cover of Better Start Digging by Dark Divine. In this video, I'm going to go through exactly how I got that guitar tone and how you can do so yourself. I will also briefly go through the other instruments just in case anyone is curious as to how I made the backing track. So the first place to start is what amp sim I'm using. They use the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, and I am using Neural Amp Modeler, also known as Gateway. There are two ways of doing this, and the first way is a more of a producery way, and it's to just use a bunch of plugins. So I'm using a compressor here. I just wanted to tighten the sound. I'm using a pre-EQ because I want to change the tone of my guitar, maybe emulating having different pickups. And then I'm using a pitch shifter because I found this free pitch shifter to be the best pitch shifter I've heard, even better than some other ones. And I'm using Neural Amp Modeler. I'm using the same amp that they're using, which is the EVH5150 EL34, as you can see here. And I'm using a Mesa 412 cab. I'm not too sure what they're using. And then I'm doing some EQ. Now, if you just like playing guitar and you don't really want to worry about all of this EQ, whatever stuff, you can use Soundshed, which is also Neural Amp Modeler, just in a more user-friendly way. You can use EQ. You don't have to use EQ. You can use the knobs on the amp, or you could just download my preset, which I'll leave in the description, and you're set. It's the same thing as Neural Amp Modeler, and it sounds identical. It's just a more user-friendly way of doing it. And if you want to give the fake live two-tracked guitars, you just add a splitter and then layer the two presets on each other. So I've got L and R. So what I would do is just use a splitter and do L at the top, R at the bottom, then pan one left, pan one right, and that way you have a fake double-tracked guitar. But I'm not focusing on performing here, I'm focusing on how you'd mix it. I've actually double-tracked the guitars, and then we'll get into the DI and explain it. A large amount of your guitar tone happens before your guitar even reaches the amp. This can range from the guitar you're using to even the guitarist playing it. This can be due to your fingering, string noise, pick attack, and even your pickups. All of this shapes a DI before any plugin ever touches it. Before we go into editing the DI, it's worth looking at what they actually are playing. Robbie uses a custom-built Balaguer Espada, which is a 27-inch baritone tuned to drop A, and it has one pickup, the bare knuckle impulse, and one knob. That single pickup high output setup already pushes a hotter, more aggressive signal into the amp before anything else touches it. I don't happen to have the same setup, so I'm using an RGI XL7, so a 7-string guitar. So getting the exact tone is impossible, but this should bring me most of the way there. The next part is editing the DI and making sure you have a nice clean take. A lot of muddiness in many people's tone comes from unnecessary string noise and sloppy playing. What you want to do is edit your best takes together and use volume automation. And it also helps to go to all the silent parts like here, cut, and delete any silence. You also want to drag everything close enough to being on the grid. That way it's nice and in time, because being out of time can cause muddiness, especially when you layer it. But you don't want to be too meticulous with this, because if you do that, it kind of gets rid of any humanization. And the whole point of double tracking guitar anyway is to make sure you play it differently, so each ear has something different to listen to. As for the specific amp configuration, their tone is a lot more simple than most people would expect. Most people would use a drive pedal before going into the amp, but all they use is a noise gate, pre-EQ, pitch shifter, amp, cab sim, and post-EQ. They use the Quad Cortex to do this, and I'm not sure exactly what was used on this record, but they should get you most of the way there. As for the amps, like I explained, they use the EVH5150 EL34, and for the cabs, they probably use a Mesa 4x12. We'll now listen to the DI to see how I did. I do have some sloppy playing, but it was good enough for this cover. And with the pitch pedal. Good enough. And to mimic having two guitars, I don't know if they use two guitars, left and right, but I wanted to give each take a slightly different feel to it. So instead of using two different guitars or two different guitarists, which is really common, I just use a different pickup configuration. I use the single coil mode and sometimes even the middle pickup just to make the left and right have some more differences. Now, it is impossible to talk about guitar without talking about bass. I didn't have a bass, so I did the second best thing. I used some MIDI bass, I pitch shifted it, I tried making it sound good, and I also did a secret. So, fortunately for me, I didn't need perfect bass because Dark Divine isn't the most bass-heavy band in the world. On top of that, what I did was render my guitar going through the amp, and then pitch shift that 12 semitones down. We'll get to that. First, let's listen to the bass soloed. Yeah, it sounds quite terrible. Then we'll listen to what I did on top of it. So I got the guitars, and then I pitched it all the way 12 semitones down, as you can see here. And then I EQ'd it. I don't want any high end because my guitar's already doing that. I don't need the high end. but I do need the bass frequencies, so I added all of that back in, and that's all I really need. Sometimes you want to add some more distortion, but I didn't think I needed it, and this should give the bass frequencies a lot fuller of a feeling. Then with the bass. Yeah, it really fills up the bass frequencies despite not being the best. But yeah, I would go into how the bass is done. I would even use a bass and record it, but I don't own a bass, and this is a guitar video anyway. As for the EQ on the guitars, I realized I just need to explain it, so I'll explain it here. So on the left guitar, I got rid of some of the mids because I was using the single coil mode, if I remember correctly, and that just added too many mids. On the right guitar, I actually wanted more mids because my pickups just didn't really have them. And the pre-EQ is basically just making your guitar have a different tone. It's like using different pickups. And then the post-EQ is just how you want the amps to sound in general. And I just did it by ear, listening to the mix. I didn't have any method for it, and you probably shouldn't either. Just listen to it in the mix and try making it sound good. On top of that, I also used a different capture of the same amp for left and right. I used a different IR for left and right, so slightly different cab. And I obviously played it 2 different times. That being said, that's as far as the guitar and bass tone goes. And remember, most of the guitar tone comes from the bass. This is without any bass frequencies. And with bass. It adds a lot, though it would be better if I had an actual bass. Now it's time to look at the rest of the track, just in case anyone's curious about how I did the cover. Firstly, for the synth, you can use Vital. You can use any sort of preset, it's not necessarily important. I tried matching it, I didn't get too close, but it's good enough, and I laid 2 presets I found. I think it sounds pretty good for what it's worth. And I like how that turned out. I also used some white noise. I found a sample and I panned it all left and right around your head, and I used some EQ and some subtle reverb just to give it a better texture to it, and it just goes around. Now, I know that this isn't actually what they did in the song. This is just my interpretation of it. This is my way of trying to fill up the noise that I'm missing, because I know that they have extra synths, they have extra noise. I couldn't figure out what it was, so this is my answer to it. I also know my guitar isn't fully accurate because they used a pitch shifter pedal and I was too lazy. They did it live or automated it, so there's a bunch of different stuff going on with the guitar as well. And then finally I have the drums. With the drums, I saturated it and I used a MIDI drum set. For anyone curious about how I did it, I used Get Good Drums, which is the only non-free part of this project, and I used Decapitator. I also laid the snare and the kick with some extra samples. That being said, that's everything, and I hope you enjoyed the cover.